When I asked my CEO for equity, he literally laughed out loud. So I decided if he wouldn't share the table, I'd build my own. If someone ever have laugh in your face when all you wanted was fair recognition, that's exactly what happened to me. I gave 3 years of my life to a company, saved their biggest deal, and worked myself to exhaustion. Then, the CEO, this smug, self-important man, laughed when I asked for a small piece of ownership. But what he didn't know, that day, his laughter was the moment he lost everything. If you want to know how my CEO, this same man who laughed in my face, ended up working for me, then stick around till the end of this video. Trust me, it's a wild ride. And hey, if real stories about karma and self-worth inspire you, hit that like button and subscribe to the channel. I've got more true stories coming your way that remind you what confidence and courage can really do in life. Let me take you back to where this story begins. My name's Justice, and back then I was 29, a back-end software developer working at a mid-sized analytics company called TechVision. On paper, it looked like the dream job. Glass-walled offices, smart people everywhere, coffee machines that sounded more complicated than half the code we wrote. The vibe was exciting at first, fast-moving, ambitious, the kind of place that made you think, yeah, this is where I'm going to build my career. But beneath all that shiny startup energy, there was rot. Small things that chipped away your confidence bit by bit. On my team of 30 developers, only 4 of us were women. None of us were in leadership. The guys called it friendly competition, but really, it was survival. Late nights weren't optional. They were how you proved your loyalty. And me? I worked harder than anyone. I stayed at the office when the lights turned off automatically at 11 p.m. I fixed broken features no one wanted to own. I learned entire programming languages on weekends just to make the next project smoother. I told myself it would all pay off eventually. Hard work never goes unnoticed, right? Spoiler alert. It does. A lot. The company's CEO, Marcus Reynolds, was one of those visionary types you see on magazine covers. Perfectly tailored suits, booming voice, fake charisma that filled a room. To the public, he was a genius. To his employees, he was a storm. Unpredictable, arrogant, and temperamental. He had this way of making you feel small without ever raising his voice. He would smile as he dismissed your ideas like they were school projects. Everyone pretended to laugh at his jokes, and every meeting felt like theater. My direct manager, Derek, was decent. A soft-spoken guy who meant well but never stood up to Marcus. He told us to pick our battles. But under Marcus, there were no battles worth winning. And still, I gave everything to that place. Then came the project that changed everything. A contract with a streaming company called Stream Connect. It was our biggest deal ever, the one that was going to put TechVision on the map, as Marcus kept saying. No one volunteered for the core engine work because it was heavy, messy code, so I stepped up. I took 2 steps in, and suddenly everyone else took 3 steps back. It became my project. For weeks, I barely left the office. I skipped family dinners, slept on the small couch near the server room more than in my bed. I worked through a fever so bad I could barely see the screen straight. But when we delivered, my code ran faster than anyone expected, 5 times faster. Stream Connect loved it. Marcus basked in the glory during meetings, shaking hands and making speeches about team excellence. Team excellence. Right. The truth was, half the team didn't even understand how my system worked, but I didn't care. I thought, finally, they'll see me. That didn't happen. There was no bonus, no promotion, not even a real thank you. Still, I told myself to stay patient. I had grown up with hardworking parents, my mom a nurse, my dad a teacher, who believed effort always spoke louder than words. You keep your head down, do your job, and good things eventually follow. But something inside me started to shift the day I found out what my male coworkers were making. It happened at lunch. We were joking about our awful health insurance when one guy, let's call him Roger, bragged about his project bonus. Same project as mine. He mentioned a number that made me freeze mid-bite. Turns out, he got paid almost double for work I had mostly done. I laughed it off at first, thinking it was an exaggeration. Later that week, I stumbled across a pay spreadsheet someone had left open on the shared drive. Roger wasn't an exception. Nearly every guy on the team, some with less experience, was earning 15 to 20% more than I was, and a few of them were even getting bonuses for projects I had led. I remember staring at that spreadsheet for what felt like an hour, my hands shaking. The truth wasn't new. It had been there all along, but now I couldn't unsee it. That's the night I stopped telling myself patience was a virtue. Then came the breaking point. A few months after our big success, Tech Vision celebrated landing 2 new clients, both of which stemmed from the Stream Connect project, my project. There was champagne in the office. Marcus gave a speech about innovation and rewarding hard work. I stood in the back, smiling politely, waiting for some mention of my contribution. He thanked the analytics team. Nothing more. When I told Hannah about it, a front-end developer and my best friend there, she narrowed her eyes and said, "You realize they're using your work to sign million-dollar deals, and you're not getting a cent of it." It hit me hard. She was right. So that night, we sat in the break room at 1 a.m., empty pizza boxes between us, planning my next step. Hannah told me to stop waiting. She said, "You've earned more than a raise. You've earned ownership." The idea scared me at first. Equity felt like something executives got, not developers. But the more I thought about it, the more it made sense. I'd built something valuable. That value should include me too. That weekend, I reread every performance review, every company announcement about record profits. I listed my contributions, documented my numbers, compared industry salaries. By Sunday night, I knew exactly what I was worth and exactly what I'd ask for. That Monday morning felt like a turning point. I'd picked out my sharpest blazer, practiced my words in the mirror until they came out calm but confident. When Marcus's assistant told me he could spare 15 minutes, my stomach flipped, but I straightened up and walked in like I belonged there. His office smelled like expensive cologne and power. Floor-to-ceiling windows, leather chairs, shelves lined with trophies and handshakes frozen in photos. He didn't even look up as I entered, just waved me in while typing on his laptop. "Justice, right? You wanted to discuss something." "Yes. Thank you for taking the time." I laid out everything, my projects, my performance, the revenue increases tied to my work. I told him I'd love to stay long-term but wanted to feel invested, not just as an employee but as part of the company's growth. So I asked for a small piece of equity. For a second, he just looked at me. No reaction. Then it started. A smirk, a chuckle, and finally, full-blown laughter. Not polite, not awkward, but mocking. He leaned back in his fancy chair and said, between laughs, "Equity, justice, let's not pretend your code changed the world. Be happy you have a stable job." I sat there, frozen, face hot, fingers gripping my folder tight enough to wrinkle the pages. I managed to say, "I'm not asking for charity. I'm asking for fair recognition." He rolled his eyes. "Developers like you are a dime a dozen. Frankly, if you think you're worth that kind of share, maybe you should try elsewhere." He waved toward the door. Meeting over. That walk out of his office felt like walking through water. I could hardly breathe. Every step echoed louder than the last. I kept a straight face until I got back to my desk, then rushed to the bathroom and locked myself in a stall. My reflection in the mirror didn't even look like me anymore. Flushed cheeks, trembling lips, mascara threatening to smear. I remember whispering to myself, "He laughed. He laughed." It was the kind of humiliation that burrows deep under your skin, the kind you think you'll never shake. But that laughter, that was the spark. Because right there, between the anger and the hurt, something else started growing. Resolve.
If he thought I'd try elsewhere, fine, I would. But I wouldn't just leave. I'd rise, and he'd remember my name.
When someone laughs in your face, you think you'll remember the sound forever, and I did. That laugh echoed in my head every single day after that meeting. It played while I brushed my teeth, while I coded, while I tried, and failed, to fall asleep at night. Marcus's smirk became the face of every person who had ever overlooked me, interrupted me, or taken credit for my work. At first, I tried to shake it off. I told myself to stay calm, be professional, keep my head down. But the truth, I was walking around that office like a ghost, awake, present, but invisible. The days blurred together. People congratulated Marcus on how well the company was doing. I answered support tickets and debugged issues while he was off giving motivational speeches about leadership. Leadership. What a joke. Even Hannah noticed I was fading. One night, after everyone else had gone, I was sitting alone in the break room just staring into my lukewarm coffee when she dropped into the chair across from me. "You've been quiet," she said softly. "Too quiet." I tried to brush it off, but she wasn't buying it. "Don't tell me you're still giving that man your time and energy. You need to start acting like he doesn't exist." "But he does," I said bitterly. "He signs my paycheck. He owns what I built." Hannah leaned forward. "Then build something they don't own next time." That night hit different. It wasn't just comforting talk, it was a seed. The week after, I started waking up early, not for tech vision, but for me. I'd make coffee, open my laptop, and spend an hour brushing up on skills that had nothing to do with my current projects. Cloud infrastructure, data pipeline optimization. I didn't know exactly what I was planning, but I wanted to be ready for anything. Still, the office made it easy. Marcus avoided eye contact completely, which honestly was fine. But Derek stared at me like a time bomb he was begging not to go off. A few coworkers started gossiping. I caught bits of it, something about me causing drama or trying to climb too fast. Meanwhile, I kept pumping out results. The code, the fixes, the updates, they were all mine. But you could see the resentment on people's faces when clients mentioned my name instead of the company's. I didn't want revenge. Not yet. I just wanted to breathe. Then one Thursday afternoon, halfway through fixing yet another rushed feature request, I got a message from Hannah. "Coffee? I'm dragging you out of here before you implode." We ended up in this tiny corner cafe 2 blocks from the office. She ordered hot chocolate because she said she needed sweetness to fight the bitterness of work. I ordered black coffee because bitterness was kind of my mood that day. "Listen," she said after a while. "You know Alex, remember? He left for InoTech about 10 months ago. Said it's like another world over there. Transparent pay, people actually respecting women in dev roles." I blinked. InoTech. The name rung a bell. I'd seen them competing with us on proposals, always coming in with better tech and fewer buzzwords. Hannah grinned. "Message him. The worst he can do is ignore you." Later that night, sitting on my couch, still wearing my work badge, I sent that message. "Hey Justice, hope you're doing great. Just wanted to hear about your experience at InoTech. Thinking it might be time for a change." I didn't expect an answer, but 2 minutes later, 2 minutes, my phone buzzed. "Justice, I was just talking about that Stream Connect project of yours the other day. Let's do coffee this weekend. I'll tell you everything." I stared at the screen for a long time before I let myself smile. Saturday came fast. I sat across from Alex in a cozy cafe that smelled like cinnamon and espresso. He looked so much happier than when he'd been at TechVision. No tired eyes, no tension in his shoulders. "Marcus still running things like a dictator?" he asked, sipping his drink. "Worse," I admitted. At this point, his ego could cover the whole data center. Alex laughed so hard, people turned to look. Then he leaned in. "Look, Justice, InoTech is expanding. I think you'd fit in right in. Honestly, I've told them about you before.
Your Stream Connect solution was brilliant. I tried to hide my shock. You told them about me? Of course. Everyone in the industry saw that platform after it launched. The way you restructured the processing layers? Genius. People still talk about it at meetups. Catherine, that's our CEO, literally used it as an example in a team meeting. For a minute, I forgot how to breathe. I wasn't crazy. I wasn't just another coder. Someone out there saw the worth of my work. Alex must have seen it on my face because he smiled. Look, Justice, InoTech is expanding. I think you'd fit in right in. Honestly, I've told them about you before. Your Stream Connect solution was brilliant. I tried to hide my shock. You told them about me? Of course. Everyone in the industry saw that platform after it launched. The way you restructured the processing layers? Genius. People still talk about it at meetups. Catherine, that's our CEO, literally used it as an example in a team meeting. For a minute, I forgot how to breathe. I wasn't crazy. I wasn't just another coder. Someone out there saw the worth of my work. Alex must have seen it on my face because he smiled. Look, Justice, InoTech is expanding. I think you'd fit in right in. Honestly, I've told them about you before. Something in me snapped, not in anger, but in decision. I wasn't going to wait for recognition anymore. Do it, I said. Let's make it official. The next week was chaos in my head. I went through the interview process with InoTech while still pretending to be a loyal TechVision employee. I'd sneak away to answer calls in the parking lot, praying none of my coworkers walked by. Their technical test wasn't about fancy algorithms or trying to trip me up. It was about real problems, building things that mattered. They wanted to see how my brain worked, not how many tricks I'd memorized. It felt refreshing, like finally being allowed to speak my own language again. After a few rounds of interviews, they asked me to meet the CEO, Catherine Wilson. When I walked into that meeting, I expected another Marcus type, flashy, detached, power drunk, but Catherine wasn't like that at all. She was calm, sharp, composed, someone who actually listened. She asked about my goals, my frustrations, even how I handled workplace bias. It felt like she saw straight through me, not in a judgmental way, but in recognition. When I told her I'd built the core of Stream Connect, her eyes lit up. That was your partitioning strategy? She asked, nervous. Yes, I said. Well, I analyzed that architecture myself. It was brilliant work, clean, scalable, and creative. It's rare to see that kind of innovation. No CEO had ever said anything like that to me. When the interview ended, she smiled and said something I'll never forget. At InoTech, we don't laugh at talent, we build around it. Expect an email from HR soon. 3 days later, that email arrived. I opened it, and there it was. An offer letter with a base salary 40% higher than what I made, real equity, bonuses that actually made sense, and a culture description that sounded like paradise compared to TechVision. I sat staring at it for nearly half an hour, rereading every line. Then I called Hannah. Her first words were, "You're taking it, right?" And for the first time in a long time, I laughed, but out of joy. Yeah, I'm taking it. Still, there was one thing left to do. Tell TechVision I was done. That Monday morning, I didn't feel nervous. I felt free. I printed my resignation letter, walked into Derek's office, and placed it on his desk. He froze mid-bite of his sandwich and said, "You're leaving?" I nodded. Yeah, I've accepted a new opportunity. Where? InoTech. You could actually feel the tension fill the room. He blinked hard, then sighed. Marcus is not going to like that. I'm not doing this for Marcus, I said quietly. I'm doing it for me. Derek looked genuinely upset, and for a second, I felt bad for him. He was stuck under Marcus too. I tried to fight for your raise, you know. Marcus refused. That almost broke me because it meant someone had tried, but still, I said gently, that ship has sailed. Half an hour later, my phone buzzed. It was an email from Marcus's assistant. Mr. Reynolds requests to see you in his office immediately. My hands didn't even shake this time. I smoothed my blouse, took a deep breath, and walked upstairs. The moment I stepped in, Marcus was standing behind his desk waving the letter. "What is this?" he snapped. "My resignation." "Don't play games, Justice. Where are you going?" "InoTech." His face drained of color. "You're joining them? Our direct competitor?" "Exactly the one you told me to try elsewhere," I said steady. There was a heavy pause, his jaw clenching hard. Then, amazingly, he changed tone. "Perhaps I was too harsh," he said, forcing a smile. "If it's just salary, I can revisit the numbers." "Marcus, they offered me 40% more, equity, and respect. We both know that's not what you're offering." For a moment, the mask slipped, and his voice turned sharp again.
The morning after I handed in that resignation letter, the air felt different, lighter. For the first time in years, I could breathe without that knot of dread sitting in my chest. 3 weeks stood between me and my new start at InoTech, and every single day felt like shedding a heavy coat I should have taken off long ago. People in the office reacted in all kinds of ways. Some congratulated me quietly, others whispered behind my back. A few acted like I'd betrayed them for leaving. One guy, Tyler, the same guy who once called my coding cute, suddenly wanted to pick my brain about opportunities. Funny how people notice your worth right after you decide to walk away. Still, every time I passed Marcus's office, he glared like I was stealing his oxygen. He even called me in one last time, pretending to be calm. 35% more, he said, sliding a paper across his desk. "Stay and we'll move you to a senior role." I looked him straight in the eye. "Marcus, you could offer me the whole company and it still wouldn't fix what's broken here." The silence that followed was the most satisfying one I'd ever heard. When my last day finally came, our department gathered for what Derek called a casual farewell. There was cake, a group card, and awkward small talk. Marcus, of course, didn't show up. Hannah squeezed my hand, whispering, "Next time I see you, it'll be as co-workers again, at InoTech." That made my day. I remember packing that small cardboard box, just a mug, some notebooks, and a photo of my family, when I caught Marcus watching from a conference room window. His arms were crossed, his jaw tight. I gave a small nod, the kind you give when you've already won. He didn't nod back. He just turned away. My first morning at InoTech was like walking into another world. The office was warm and open, filled with natural light instead of the cold, gray glow I'd gotten used to. People were smiling, actually smiling, and not in that fake corporate way. I got my laptop within 10 minutes, a welcome package, and even a handwritten note from Catherine, the CEO herself. It said, "We're thrilled you're here. Your work has already inspired us. Now let's build something even bigger together." You'd think a company that size would be robotic, but everything about InoTech felt human. There were focus rooms, quiet pods, shared kitchens stocked with food that wasn't just stale donuts. Someone had even written motivational doodles on a whiteboard that said, "Innovation only works when people do." Catherine's office door was literally open, like no assistant guarding her schedule, no "please make an appointment" sign, just her at her desk actually working. That first week, every tiny difference tasted like freedom. Then came my first big project. It was Catherine's idea, a platform to track healthcare analytics in real time. The architecture was complex, similar to Stream Connect, but in a completely different sector. When I joined the kickoff meeting, everyone was friendly and curious, not defensive or territorial. Halfway through, I suggested a system structure that built off the one I'd made a tech vision. No one shot it down.
No one told me to run it by management. Instead, my supervisor, Michael, leaned forward and said, "That's brilliant. Let's explore that further. Would you lead the sub-team to prototype it?" I thought he was joking at first, but when I saw everyone nodding, I realized he wasn't. That's just how things worked there. Competency led the room, not status. For months, we built and refined the project. I made sure to share credit with my team every step of the way. And then one afternoon, my phone buzzed with an email that made me go completely still. From Ryan Patel, CTO, StreamConnect. Subject, looking to catch up. He wrote, "Heard you're now with InoTech. We've had ongoing issues with TechVision's implementation since your departure. Would you be open to a discussion about our international expansion? We'd love your insight." I sat at my desk, staring at the screen, heart racing. Not because it scared me, because it felt poetic. The same client Marcus had bragged about saving under his leadership was now turning to me. I called Michael, my new boss, and explained. He listened, quiet but interested. When I finished, he just said, "If they're reaching out to you, that's a good sign. Let's run it through Catherine." That evening, I sat in Catherine's office explaining the situation. She didn't interrupt once. When I finished, she smiled. "You realize what that means, right? Marcus is losing grip, and they trust you, not him." Her eyes twinkled. "Let's prepare a proposal." That weekend, I worked with Michael and a small team drafting a plan that would expand StreamConnect's analytics internationally, something TechVision had promised but could never deliver. We didn't make it petty, we made it strategic, clean, professional, technically revolutionary. When we finally sent off the proposal, I felt a mix of pride and nerves. 2 weeks later, we got the news. StreamConnect had officially signed with InoTech. The day that email hit our inboxes, Catherine walked into my office holding 2 coffees. She said, "They switched over. InoTech's leading their expansion now." It took me a second to realize what she meant. They left TechVision? Catherine grinned, completely. I laughed, louder than I'd planned. All the tension, the anger, the long nights, it finally made sense. This wasn't just revenge, this was justice in motion. A few days later, my phone pinged with a LinkedIn notification. The name on the screen almost made me choke on my coffee. Marcus Reynolds. Message. "Hi Justice, hope you're doing well. I followed InoTech's recent progress with StreamConnect. Impressive work. TechVision's going through restructuring, and I believe your experience could be extremely valuable, leading some of our new development efforts. Would you be open to a conversation?" I actually laughed out loud. The man who once told me to try elsewhere was now trying me. I stared at his message for a while, thinking of that meeting, him leaning back in his shiny chair, laughing like my ambition was some kind of joke. I typed a reply that was only 5 sentences long. "Hi Marcus, good to hear from you. I'm very fulfilled at InoTech and not considering other opportunities. Wishing TechVision all the best going forward. Professional, polite, utterly final." Later that afternoon, Catherine stopped by my desk. She said, "Something tells me that email wasn't just about congrats." I smiled. Let's just say Marcus finally realized who built his success. She chuckled, then turned serious. "Justice, what you did, turning humiliation into progress, it's remarkable. Most people would have tried to get even. You got better." Her words filled the room like sunlight. That night, I walked home under a quiet sky, replaying everything in my head, from the laughter, the sleepless nights, the self-doubt, to this exact moment. I didn't need revenge anymore. What I had was far more powerful: growth, respect, purpose. But I'll admit, knowing Marcus would one day have to walk into my company for an interview, that part didn't hurt either.
I used to think revenge had to be loud, public, fiery, full of drama. Turns out the sweetest payback is calm, professional, and undeniable. Months passed after I turned down Marcus's message, but life at InoTech just kept getting better. Our healthcare analytics project took off, Stream Connect was thriving with us, and I wasn't just that developer who left TechVision. I was leading a team, mentoring younger engineers, and finally feeling what I'd always craved: respect. Every once in a while, someone from TechVision would pop up in my LinkedIn notifications. Sometimes it was a coworker sneaking a peek at my new title. Sometimes it was a quiet, "Congrats" message paired with a subtle, "By the way, are you hiring?" I never gloated. I just smiled and told them we were expanding. But one day, about 6 months after the Stream Connect switch, I got a calendar invite from Catherine. Subject line, possible new hire, familiar name. When I opened the email, my stomach did a full flip. Attached was a resume. Marcus Reynolds. I blinked 3 times, thinking it had to be some kind of prank. Nope, it was his real resume. Same distinguished font, same self-important tone. He'd applied for a consulting position at InoTech's innovation branch. And guess who was part of the internal review committee for that department? Me. Catherine called me into her office later that day. When I walked in, she was already smirking. "Justice," she said slowly. "I assume you've seen our applicant list." "I have," I said, sitting down. "I didn't expect that name." "Neither did I," she said, sipping her coffee. "But it's real. He reached out directly." I didn't know whether to laugh or feel offended on behalf of the entire universe. The same man who told me I was replaceable had now literally walked himself into my world, CV in hand, looking for help. Catherine leaned forward. "You're under no obligation to be part of this process, but if you'd like to, I'll support it. Consider it closure." A slow smile spread across my face. "Oh, I'd very much like to." The day of the interview panel, my heart was calm, not pounding with nerves like it used to. I wore the same blazer I'd worn that day in his office years ago. Poetic symmetry, right? When Marcus walked through the door, he froze for half a second. He looked older, more tired, his trademark confidence to something almost uncertain. His eyes met mine, and I saw it, the flicker of recognition, then discomfort. He said, "Justice, I didn't realize you were with this company." I smiled, steady and polite. "Senior development lead. Welcome to InoTech." The interview started. The other panelists treated it like any other candidate conversation. They asked about his experience, his approach to management, how he handled team morale. I stayed quiet for most of it, letting him talk himself into a corner. When it was finally my turn, I spoke. Calm, direct, almost gentle. "Mr. Reynolds, you once told me developers like me were a dime a dozen. I'm curious, how have your thoughts on leadership and value changed since then?" You could hear a pin drop. He swallowed hard and forced a laugh. "Well, every leader grows, times change." "Right," I said, smiling just enough to make him twist in his chair. "At InoTech, we believe leadership starts with respect. Laughter isn't a management strategy here." Catherine's eyebrow twitched upward just barely. She loved it. The rest of the interview was polite but short. When he left, the silence that followed was satisfying. Catherine looked at me once he was gone. That felt cathartic, didn't it? I laughed, more than therapy. A week later, Catherine stopped by my desk with an envelope. No words, just a knowing nod. Inside was the official decision. Declined. No offer, no follow-up. I didn't feel like celebrating, I just felt peaceful. The universe had handled it perfectly. No shouting, no revenge plot, just karma dressed in professionalism. From then on, life at InoTech only grew brighter.
Hannah joined the company a few months later, and when I saw her walk through the doors that first day, I nearly cried. We'd survived the same storm, and now we were both finally somewhere we could breathe. We started mentoring other women in tech, helping them with negotiations, confidence, navigating bias. Catherine championed the effort, giving us space to build networking groups and training programs. Every once in a while, someone would come to me shaken and say, "I don't think I'm valued at my company. Should I speak up or just stay quiet?" And I'd always tell them the same thing. Speak up, and if they don't listen, walk away. Your voice is your power. Don't let anyone laugh you out of your worth. Because that's the truth I learned the hard way. A year after Marcus's interview, I heard through the grapevine that TechVision had lost a few more clients. They'd overworked their staff, burned through their best developers, and their reputation was slipping fast. Meanwhile, InoTech was expanding internationally, with Stream Connect leading the way. The irony was chef's kiss. One evening, after another successful launch, I stayed late in the office, looking over the city skyline. The same skyline I used to see from Marcus's intimidating office windows. Only this time, I saw it from a place that felt earned. All those sleepless nights, all the humiliation, every doubt, it all boiled down to one truth that felt stronger than ever. You can't build a company's success on people you refuse to respect. That's what brought Marcus down. That's what lifted me up. As for me, I never became bitter. Only wiser. When I hired my own developers, I made sure they were valued, fairly paid, and given credit for their work. I promised myself nobody under me would ever have to sit through the kind of meeting I once did, the one where ambition was treated like arrogance. And I'll admit, sometimes when the office was quiet, I'd remember that moment. Marcus leaning back, laughing at me for asking for an equity stake. Thinking about it no longer hurt. It just reminded me how far I'd come. Because now the tables had turned completely. The man who laughed when I asked for a seat at the table ended up knocking on the door of my company, hoping someone like me would let him in. He laughed once. I smiled last. If you've ever been underestimated or disrespected, remember this. Your value doesn't vanish just because someone fails to see it. Keep building, keep learning, keep growing. Because one day, the same people who mocked you might be standing on the other side of your success, wishing they'd treated you differently. Respect isn't something you wait for, it's something you require. So yeah, that's how the same CEO who once laughed at me ended up knocking on the door of my company, hoping for a chance to come inside. If this story made you smile or reminded you never to let anyone decide your value, make sure you like this video and subscribe for more powerful, real-life stories that show what it really means to stand up for yourself and win.